Sunday Surefire Podcast. I'm your host, the Commish. I am flying solo tonight on an episode just to hit on a few quick topics here. We've been done a ton of stuff with rookie content. We've covered a number of other topics as well in the fantasy landscape over the last several months. So we're taking a breather from the hardcore strategy stuff or which rookies we like and all that. But there are some footballs flying around out there around the NFL. It's nice to see guys out there, even if they're not in full pads hitting each other. They hardly do that anymore as it is in the NFL, especially at this time of year. But it's still good to see those guys out there getting some work in the offseason. And with that always comes some buzz around the league and some OTA storylines that need to be touched on. So that's going to be the purpose of this episode here. Just a quick hitter talking about some of the headliners around the league, things of that nature. So we'll dive right into it here. We'll start with Trevor Lawrence getting the absolute bag from the Jacksonville Jaguars, signing for 5 years, $275 million, $142 million of which of that is fully guaranteed. And what we have here with Lawrence, guys, is an example of this the next man up in line for a contract, getting a big old contract at the quarterback position. And when it comes to fantasy, I know there's a segment of the community that's going to be down on Lawrence, and I get it. If you paid up for him this time a year ago, you definitely weren't in love with the return that he gave you in 2023 as he finished QB 13 on the season. But he's also just 1 year removed from a quarterback 8 overall finish the year prior. So when I look at Trevor Lawrence's long-term outlook here, I think the most likely scenario for him is that he sort of settles somewhere in between those two marks, where he's kind of eventually more or less a mid to back end QB1 in most seasons. And even if he does that, like even if he never fully lives up to the hype he had coming out of college, where he was billed as a generational talent coming out of Clemson, if he never becomes that elite fantasy producer, I still see him being an incredibly safe superflex asset, and he'll hold his value for several years to come here. What this contract signifies for him is that the Jags, even though there's been some mixed returns on Lawrence to begin his career, that they're all in on him as the future of their franchise. And with this contract, he gets opportunities to fail and keep getting those opportunities to get back on the field, which is what we need as fantasy managers. We need those quarterbacks in our lineup because, there's only 32 of them every single week. So just a super safe, super flex asset I see out of Trevor Lawrence. So unless the guy completely falls off a cliff, which I don't see happening, he's going to remain a quality piece of your super flex rosters. And not for nothing, the Jaguars have also been willing to build around him. They signed Christian Kirk a couple of years ago. People laughed at the contract saying, oh, you can't give Christian Kirk that much money. And the team said, well, we have a young quarterback, so why not see what we can get out of him and give him some pieces to succeed. They go ahead and get Evan Ingram. And then they draft Brian Thomas Jr. in round 1 this year. And then they signed Gabe Davis, who, obviously is a boomer bust guy, but he can help an NFL team and he can help a quarterback. So he'll provide some field stretching for them. And I just like seeing this overall from the team standpoint. They're doing it with their actions. They're giving Lawrence the money. They're also surrounding him with pieces to make him be successful in the long run. So Lawrence remains a safe asset to me. And if I have him, especially as my second quarterback, I'm definitely in business. If he's my QB1 in a superflex format, and I have another guy who's sort of in the same tier as him, I'm perfectly fine with that as well. Let's go to another player here. This guy, his team hasn't necessarily given him the bag. They're not necessarily making a long-term commitment on him quite yet. That's T. Higgins signing his franchise tag. He's going to play 2024 on a 1-year, $21.8 million contract. He's been productive to start his career for sure. In 2023, we did see Higgins and Burrow both miss time, so that definitely put a damper on what he was able to produce for fantasy managers a season ago. We did see him produce top 24 finishes in both 2021 and 2022 when the Bengals offense is really humming on all cylinders. And, that range, I think, feels about right for him in the mid to back end WR2 category entering 2024, because as we know, Jamar Chase is there. This guy's going to lead the team in targets when he's healthy. So I don't see Higgins having quite WR1 upside without a massive TD spike going his way. We just know Chase is going to get a big chunk of that pie from a target standpoint. So, which is why, for years on this podcast, I've been saying T. Higgins is one of the most overrated players in Dynasty. And for a few years, I've been right about that. Despite a couple of good quality finishes, there's nothing wrong with a mid to back end WR2 finish, but when you have to pay WR1 prices to get that on your team, you're going to leave yourself a little bit disappointed, which is what Higgins managers have been given the price that they're paid to acquire to get him in the last couple seasons. So at just 25 years old, though, I'm not out on him completely. I do still think he could move on to a new home a year from now and just land in a better situation, man. I mean, where if he can go to a place where he can end up being a target hog, I think he does have a lot more upside in that type of scenario, both from a TD standpoint as well, just an overall volume of looks coming his way, which is what we want. We want to hunt volume in fantasy. So I do think it's on the table for a young player who has shown at the NFL level that there is more opportunity for him down the line if he can get away from this situation. And as far as some of the other guys I've been high on in the past, I guess we will touch on some rookies here quickly. Guys like Jermaine Burton and Eric All. Guys I like grabbing late in drafts. The news here is a little discouraging that Higgins is going to be back, but I'm still high on those two. There's an opportunity for one of them to become Joe Burrow's third option as early as this season. In that role, we saw Tyler Boyd finish as a top 36 receiver in back-to-back years in 2021 and 2022. So that type of production would be huge for either Eric All or Jermaine Burton in their rookie season. And with Higgins walking into a contract here, entering again next offseason, there's a real chance that one of those two could or both of them could slide up in the pecking order. Maybe we see one of them settling in as the second option behind Chase and the other coming in as that third option, which is good for fantasy for either guy. So I'm going to remain high on those guys going forward. And let's go to another guy that I really am high on, have been for a few years now. I know Ethan Weaver, not on the podcast tonight. He's been probably the highest man on this guy in the past. That's Brandon Ayuk. The news around him is that he's telling Jaden Daniels via FaceTime that the 49ers don't want him anymore. They don't want him back in the building, all this stuff. And, first off here, I think the 49ers would absolutely love to have Brandon Ayuk back in their facility in 2024 and most likely beyond as well. But with the receiver market kind of blowing up, you see guys getting $30 million plus a year at their wide receiver position. It's probably just a case of he's asking for the moon and the 49ers don't want to give it to him, at least not yet. So if you look at the rest of the 49ers roster, they're a team, they're ready to go right now. They have skilled players out the ears. They have a good defense. They have a quality running game led by Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy kind of makes all this work around him because he makes about $12 an hour out there playing quarterback in the NFL, which doesn't get you very far in California, believe it or not. But Ayuk here, like I said, crowded situation, but if you look at what this guy does on the field, especially last year, like he's an analytics darling. I know we live in the analytics world, so I'll drop some of that on you real quick here. In 2023, among wide receivers, he was third in yards per route run, second in yards per target and yards per reception, fourth in fantasy points per target, and like I said, second in yards per route run. So he was awesome last season from an efficiency standpoint. The problem is the total number of targets he gets. His 6.6 targets per game were just 37th among wide receivers in 2023. So it's just, he's awesome when he gets the looks. He's just not getting quite as many as the other elite receivers around him. So, I think it just comes down to that crowded room. Like I mentioned, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, etc. So Ayuk was going to have his quiet games. He's going to continue to do that again going forward. And, but I do still remain high on this guy here. And the last point I have on Ayuk is a little bit of an interesting stat here. Since 2017 in half PPR scoring formats, only 8 wide receivers have finished as a top 12 producer for the first time in their career after their fourth year in the NFL. Meaning that if you don't pop into WR1 territory in your first 4 years in the NFL, you almost never do it. And Ayuk falls into that bucket. He's never finished as a top 12 wide receiver, but he's come really close. He's been a high-end WR2 in the past, and I don't usually love betting on outliers, but this is a guy that I do want to push my chips in if I want to make a bet on a guy who can definitely make that jump at some point. Maybe it's not this year in that crowded offense. Maybe he sneaks in to the back end of the top 12. Maybe he doesn't, but if you drop this guy into another offense where he gets an alpha target share, I think that he's absolutely going to crush in that spot as a top 25 receiver someday. Hopefully it's this year. Maybe not. We'll see how it goes down the line. Let's pivot over to the running back position and just going to touch on Jaleel McLaughlin looking good at OTAs. I mean, hell, we have Denver reporters out there in Denver suggesting that Javonte Williams' roster spot might not be secured by any means, that he might be on the bubble entering camp this year. That to me does feel like kind of just talk that you bring up on sort of a slow news day, if I'm being 100% honest. Williams is slated to make just $1.8 million in the final year of his rookie contract. So I do think he's going to be there in Denver this season. I mean, they had to eat a lot of money just to get Russell Wilson off their team. So he's a nice, cheap running back they can kind of use and then let him walk if they want to move on from him and a guy like Williams. But, McLaughlin did show some flashes in 2023, and the team did draft Audric Estime. So I guess it's not crazy to think that Williams, will be gone after the season. And then, maybe towards the second half of 2024, the team says, hey, Williams isn't the future. Guys like Estime and McLaughlin are. So let's give these two guys the lion's share of the work. Let's see what they can do as they kind of are in sort of a transitioning year. They have a rookie quarterback as well. And Bo Nix love checking the ball down to guys like Bucky Irving and receivers like Troy Franklin on screens last season at Oregon. So I could see McLaughlin being a guy who's a big beneficiary of that, a player that you just have to get the ball in his hands and let him use his ability after the catch to work. If you just go to YouTube. I say pop in the tape. No one pops in tape anymore. If I'm being 100% honest with you, I don't think I've popped in a tape of any kind since the early 2000s, if I'm being honest. But if you go to YouTube here, just check out his highlights. I mean, you can kind of just see it for yourself. He's a guy you get into space and let him work, which I think a young quarterback like Bo Nix is going to want. I think a guy like Sean Payton is certainly capable of dialing up some looks to help him succeed in 2024. And the last player we're going to touch on, this is I'm on a solo podcast here. I definitely had to bring up one of my New England Patriots, and I'm going to go to Demario Pop Douglas. He's looking good at OTAs, or some of the early reports out of Foxborough. For those that don't know who Douglas is, he's a receiver the Patriots selected in the 6th round in 2023. Finished last season with 49 grabs for 561 yards in just 14 games. Did not find the end zone, but hey, he was wearing a Patriots uniform in 2023. So what do you expect? No one was finding the end zone around here in New England. So, the Patriots, as we know, they move on from Belichick. They bring in Gerard Mayo. They're kind of just overhauling everything at this point, which must need it. They had to reset the decks here after a disastrous season in 2023, but that just kind of means there's a little bit of opportunity for the cream of the crop to rise to the top. And right now, if you look at the receiver room in New England, it's not great. Not great, Bob, by any means, but they currently boast Juju Smith-Schuster, who was hurt and invisible in 2023. Tyquan Thornton has been a massive disappointment in his first 2 years in the NFL. Kendrick Bourne has done some nice things as a Patriot in his career, but he's coming off a torn ACL. And Jalen Polk, rookie second-round pick. If you listen to Ethan and I's takes on Polk and the Patriots' selection of him in the early part of the second round of April's NFL draft, I mean, that we hated the pick where it was made, and he's a rookie. Maybe he'll exceed our expectations, but I'm tempering my expectations for him in 2024. And beyond that, it's really just KJ Osborne, who is a career jag at best. So I looked at him as more of a depth signing, but I think overall here, you kind of look back a little bit at Pop's season last year. He was 18th in target separation and 25th in yards after catch in 2023. That's not a leap by any means, but hey, it's what the team's got to work with. And no matter who is playing quarterback for this team, whether it's Jacoby Brissett or if they just roll with Drake May from day one, they need to create some easy throws for this offense. And I think Pop is the guy to fill that role. And if I'm betting on one Patriots wide receiver to lead this team in targets in 2024, I actually think it's going to be the former 6th-round pick in Pop Douglas, which is both a credit to him and some of the things that he's shown earlier in his career, and a knock on my hometown Patriots for just being a complete mess and not pointing up the money to go get difference-making wide receiver in this offseason, a la Calvin Ridley. But that's where I'm at. I won't turn this into a Patriots party here like I've been known to do in the past. But that's what I have here, folks, for you. If you enjoyed the content, make sure you're checking us out on YouTube. We're on X as well at Sunday_Surefire, on Instagram at Sunday Surefire, on Facebook too, if you're still using that. Definitely check us out on that. And if you find yourself in need of some custom advice, there is an outlet for you to get that from us at Sunday Surefire. You can hit us up on what's known as the Didit app. That's DIDIT. They're on X at GetDidit. That's at GETDIDIT. And essentially what that is, folks, it's for iOS users only. But what it does is it allows you to instantly connect with a fantasy analyst and just really get some customized advice for what you think is best for your team. You can talk to that person. It's pay per minute. The prices are all on there. Wicked easy to use. Connects you to them on FaceTime right away. And there's actually a nice little screen sharing function on there too. So you can show them your team in real time. They can make some determinations to help you out. We prefer it if you hit us up on a DM on that platform first. We'll get some context from you. And then Sunday Surefire, we always put it out there that we're willing to kind of take some notes before the call, and then we'll send you email you those notes after the fact, so you can kind of walk away with a complete picture of what we think is best for your team. Right now, we're on there. It's only $1 a minute for our time if you want to have that face-to-face consultation. But there's also all the other really good analysts on there too. I think it's definitely worth giving it a shot. But thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure you hit that follow button. And until next time, folks, peace.